Jonathan Green is president of Susquehanna University. In your recent commencement address, you made a comment that for the first time in our nation's history, higher education is under attack and the siege is coming from our own government. What's going on?
Well, I think it's hard to open a newspaper or listen to a news broadcast and not hear of some assaults on the academy, whether it's challenges to the value of higher education or the series of executive orders that we've seen over the course of the last 3 months, and the Dear Colleague letter that came out in February about higher education, that in many ways is sort of challenging the foundations of the work that we've been doing for the last century and a half.
Have you seen this from other presidents in the past?
This is a new experience. I mean, every president has an agenda related to higher education. Every Secretary of Education also has a particular agenda, and sometimes that causes some interesting challenges from both sides of the aisle. We try to be nimble and navigate what those new challenges are. But nothing like this has really happened in American history.
Why do you think it's happening now?
It's hard to tell. One of the things that I mentioned in my remarks at commencement was that there does seem to be sort of a concerted desire to diminish people's faith in experts. And of course, the academy is the place that develops expertise. People study things deeply, they evaluate, they provide recommendations to hopefully move society forward. And sort of in the era of fake news and what we can and can't trust, there also seems to be the thing that what can we do to weaken the value of experts in terms of guiding the decisions we make as a society.
Now, you've also signed a letter with 150 college university presidents trying to address some of these issues. What was the purpose of the letter?
Well, one of the things that's exciting is that the day the letter came out, and this was sponsored by the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and AAC&U, which is the Association of American Colleges and Universities. The day the letter came out, there were about 100 signatures on it when it was released, and now it's about 625, I believe. So a number of presidents signed even that first day. The two things that the letter aims to do, one is acknowledge the fact that we have a wide range of higher education opportunities and traditions in the United States. I mean, that's one of the great strengths of us as a nation, is that there are schools that are set up for all kinds of different goals and perspectives and for broad constituencies of students. And trying to impose sort of homogeneic guidelines of this is what you have to do is challenging. Because part of it is that the freedom of the marketplace and students going to institutions that provide the kinds of experiences that they believe will be best for them is one of the strengths that we have. And then the other component of that letter was asking for constructive dialogue. Because in a number of cases, like the Dear Colleague letter I mentioned a little while ago, the first contact that I had, and I think almost every college president in the country had from the new Department of Education, was a letter saying you can't do this, this, and this, even before saying hello. So the presidents who signed it acknowledged that our institutions all have shortcomings and that we are very eager to continue to improve our institutions and work together and to work with the department to strengthen education. But a series of what seemed to be not very well informed mandates. And in fact, I can say that I think that they recognized they weren't very well informed, because there was a follow-up letter 2 weeks later that clarified a lot of things. But the spirit was challenging, and we were trying to say we would love to collaborate.
So I want to go back to your commencement address. Another comment that you made there was that the Founding Fathers emerged from the intellectual flames of the Enlightenment. How does that environment inform universities in the United States?
Well, we are unique in higher education in the world in what we refer to as a liberal arts education. That is something that is really an American homegrown model. And the idea is to instill students with the capacity to do strong reasoning and evaluation. I mean, one of the things we always say is we try to teach students how to think, but we sure don't try to tell them what to think. And so what kinds of skills do we develop with a curriculum that helps students to be critical thinkers and lifelong learners? And that was really designed by the Founding Fathers. If you look at some of the first liberal education curricula in the United States, they were at institutions that Thomas Jefferson creating a curriculum for the University of Virginia, which he founded. Benjamin Franklin doing the same thing with Penn before the Revolution. Alexander Hamilton helping to guide what became Hamilton College after his death. James Madison, who played a critical role in the University of Virginia, but also he and Patrick Henry founded Hampden-Sydney College 6 months before the Declaration of Independence was signed. All of them recognized that the experiment of a democratic republic was going to require a well-informed leadership in the next generation to be able to preserve democracy. And that's been something that I think higher education in America has grown up both as a defense and strengthening of democracy, and democracy has also strengthened higher ed.
Now, in the letter, it also talks about the importance of the ability for freely exchanging of ideas and concerns about censorship and retribution. How serious are those concerns?
Well, I think they're really fundamental to American higher education. When we talk about academic freedom, one of the things that has been really a hallmark of American higher education since the early 20th century is the putting in a set of protections within universities so that scholars can ask challenging questions, do research, do scholarship, and draw conclusions that haven't been shaped by external forces that might benefit from them. So the idea is, how do we make sure that the truth is unfettered, even if it ends up being inconvenient to a college president or a leader of a business or a political figure, that we want the work of the scholar, and that goes back all the way to Emerson and the American scholar in the 1830s, that the role of the scholar is to observe and then inform society of the conclusions of his observations.
Now, the letter also says that we must reject the coercive use of public research funding. How is that coercion manifesting itself?
Well, actually, the very first executive order that got the attention of higher education leaders was one that announced the curtailment of funding for a whole series of aspects of what the government was underwriting, including research projects on campuses. And in many cases, it was tied to whether or not the research focused on particular ideas. And the thing that came up frequently was if there was anything related to diversity, equity, or inclusion, even in the name of the project. So there were health research things where diversity of bacterium in X, Y, and Z ended up having funding pulled because the word was in the name, and not sort of sitting down and saying, are we using our resources effectively to advance things for the betterment of our society?
For this federal funding that goes to colleges, how much of an impact does that have on local communities?
It depends on the institution. For institutions like Susquehanna, almost all of the federal funding that goes through our institution is in the form of financial aid for students. For example, about 30% of our student body receive Pell scholarships. They also have federally subsidized student loans, federal work study, and that ends up representing probably about 95 or more percent of all the federal funds that go through our institution. But if you're at a research institution like Carnegie Mellon or Penn, literally thousands of people may be employed on research projects in all areas, whether it's technology, medicine, and curtailing that funding means that there are thousands of people in the community that suddenly are unemployed.
Now, some funding has been frozen. What efforts are being made to unfreeze it?
Well, there's lots of advocacy. There also have been a number of court cases. I think about once a week in the newspaper, I'll see some organization that has filed a lawsuit, and in a number of cases there have also been judges that have rendered sort of temporarily unfreezing some of those funds. But at the moment, the questions haven't been resolved. They're still held up in the courts.
Are schools seeing issues with enrollment as a result of the loss of some of these funds?
We're anticipating that we may. Already, we've been talking for the last decade or so about the demographic cliff that has already hit Pennsylvania in terms of not only how many 18-year-olds there are, but also where they are. And actually, the number of 18-year-olds will continue to go up for about one more year, and then we know that they're going down for the next 18 years because we know how many people were born. But those populations have shifted south and west over that time, so there are fewer traditional college-age students in this part of the country already. But then one of the things that's happening right now is looking at the budgeting for financial aid. The newest component from reconciliation is suggesting that up to 1/3 of the students who receive Pell funding may either find themselves no longer eligible or receiving funding that's less than what it was in the past. And so my guess is that when that ends up all being made clear and students ultimately see what their final financial aid packages are, that there will be a number of students and families that realize that they're no longer going to be able to afford a college education. And our institutions do as much as we can. I mean, my institution actually provides significantly more financial aid to our students than what they're receiving in terms of Pell funding. We're already giving away as much as we can, and so if that goes away, it may just make the gap too great for families to be able to invest in education.
Now, colleges often recruit students from outside the United States to come in. What types of federal policies are impacting that recruitment?
The biggest challenge right now will just be whether students can get visas, and it's not clear whether that will be affected. But there certainly has been a chilling effect on whether or not college students from other countries feel that they're welcome in the United States. And if you look through the news over the course of the last month or so, there's a fair amount of coverage of students in certain countries that have historically come to the United States that are now applying to other countries where they feel they'll be more welcome. There was a period of time a couple of months ago where there was also pretty broad concern that if students were to go home, that they very well might not be able to come back. And we haven't really seen that play out too much, although there was a moment about a month ago where, once again, a court action changed a policy, but there were many institutions that had students that got letters from the government saying that they immediately had to go home because they had broken a law. And in many cases, it was a parking ticket or something else that was not criminal activity or not malicious. So there was an injunction that said that could no longer happen. But I've talked to colleagues at a dozen institutions where they had students that went home before that happened and probably will never come back.
Now, can you talk about the financial impact of a decline in foreign students in terms of loss of tuition?
Mm-hmm. Well, it varies dramatically from institution to institution. There are some institutions where the majority of international students receive little financial aid from the institution. They're not eligible, obviously, for federal financial aid. But say my institution, we try to provide as much need and merit-based aid for our international students as we do for our domestic students from an institutional standpoint. But for a number of institutions, that actually is an important revenue source. And there are colleges and universities in the Commonwealth that have as much as 20% of their student body coming from another country. And if 20% of your customer base goes away overnight, that's certainly going to have a profound impact on how those institutions operate.
Now, much federal funding is used to finance scientific research, and how does that then? What types of downstream effects are there from that funding throughout society?
Sure. Well, thinking back to Penn, they if they were to eliminate all the people that are doing federally funded research on their campus, that would be a couple thousand people on unemployment. And all of the additional effects that follow that in terms of the kinds of support that needs to be provided for people who are gainfully employed and who are also doing work that was benefiting all of their neighbors. I can't imagine that there's anyone who doesn't think that cancer research is going to help all of us, because cancer could hurt all of us. Yet there are those kinds of projects that have been put on hold or canceled as a result of that work. And so, at an institution that has a large research branch, that can really have a paralyzing effect on the work that they do.
How has the loss of funding impacted bringing in new doctorate students?
A number of institutions, and I'm at an institution that is almost exclusively undergraduate, so this is not part of my experience, but we've seen across the country a number of large premier research institutions that have announced that they are taking no doctoral students this year because they're not sure that they're going to be able to support the kinds of research experiences that those students need to complete their degrees.
Now, the United States has long been a leader in science.
Mm-hmm.
Could there be a long-term effect of that status of the United States?
I think that's a real threat. That's one of the really remarkable things is that throughout our lifetimes, the United States has been the leader in technology, in medicine, in all aspects of scientific research, and in work in the arts and culture. And when all of those different venues are suddenly sort of being cut off at the knees, you have to wonder how long we can sort of ride on what we already have.
How much does this impact Pennsylvania college's ability to be competitive?
It has a profound impact. And Pennsylvania has the most complicated or complex higher education ecosystem in the country, because we have both the state system, the PASHE schools, we have the state affiliates, which is Penn State and Pitt, and we've got community colleges across the Commonwealth that are fundamentally independent of each other, and then just shy of 90 independent nonprofit institutions. And so in terms of the range of institutions, and also with those independent institutions, in Pennsylvania, they educate the largest portion of low-income students, that is a unique aspect of the Pennsylvania higher education system. If you look across the country, in most cases, lower income students are almost exclusively in public institutions, but the sector that actually graduates the most low income students and then changes the entire economic trajectory of their families in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are the independent colleges. And one other thing that I think is an important realization is Pennsylvania is the number 2 importer of college students in the country. And so the ways in which the quality of higher education and the range of higher education in Pennsylvania attracts students from outside of the Commonwealth is an incredibly important part of our economy. And actually higher education, I believe, is the 5th largest economic contributor to the overall financial health of the state.
Over the past few years, we've seen several colleges close down in the state. And could the loss of some funding cause others to close down?
I'm sure that it will happen. And actually, there was a piece in the Chronicle of Higher Education a couple of days ago that was predicting the number of institutions that would close just through normal attrition, because some colleges have closed every year forever. Then when the marketplace is shifting, that certainly creates some additional challenges. But I believe that article suggested that the number of institutions to close over the next decade would nearly double because of the financial implications of what's in place right now.
How would the loss of the funding impact communities in rural areas?
In many places, the higher education institutions are really the core of the economy of the community. In Susquehanna is in Snyder County, and we have the second most of independent or private operations. We have the second largest number of employees and the largest payroll. I can't even imagine if we weren't there what the impact on our neighborhood would be.
When colleges and universities start to lose funding, where do they start trimming first? Do they let faculty go? Did let staff go? How does that work?
Well, it does depend on the institution, and I think it also how the institution is set up, because certainly independent institutions are following slightly different guidelines. So for us, preserving faculty lines is always sort of at the forefront, because we want to be sure that anything that we do doesn't diminish the experience of the students. And since education is at the very forefront, that's the last place that we would look at. Some other institutions. Enrollments may be affecting how they can actually staff the classroom. We've been fortunate in that our enrollments have been pretty steady.
Have you and your colleagues been reaching out to members of Congress and other legislators?
Absolutely. In terms of the legislative director for our member of Congress, I think would worry if he didn't get an email from me about once a week. But it is important to note that that's actually a really positive relationship. When I send a message to in our case, Congressman Thompson, I want him to know, these are the things I know you're looking at right now, and I want you to know how it will affect students at my institution, what those implications are. And the great thing is that he and his staff will also communicate with us about these are the things we're looking at and what should we know. So it's I feel well supported, but I also think that it's my responsibility to be sure that our elected officials actually know whatever decisions are made related to higher education, what will happen in our communities and how it affects our students.
Do you think that they're hearing your concerns?
I do. The question is whose voices are the loudest, and of course there also are all kinds of competing interests. I mean, even in the newspaper this morning, there are plenty of people who are concerned with budget cuts in the upcoming budget, but there also were people who are saying that they haven't cut enough and that they're going to oppose it because they want to see even more cuts. And so it's not a black and white question. There are 3 or 4 different levers that are competing with each other, and I think the thing that we need to do is make sure that if some things are sacrificed and others aren't, that we express the things that are most valuable to our communities and look after them first and foremost.
Now, another comment that you made in your commencement address was you mentioned that the threats to higher education betray a profound lack of understanding of what we do. Why do you think people don't understand what universities do?
Well, I think partly, I'm afraid maybe we don't do a good job of communicating that. But if you read editorials about higher education, or if you read a lot of things that elected officials talk about, you would think that we were elitist institutions that are bringing young people in and trying to indoctrinate them into some sort of shared set of values around political agendas, and that's just absolutely not what happens on our campuses. As I mentioned earlier, we try to give students the opportunity to develop the skills to be able to really ask deep and probing questions and draw their own conclusions. And on my campus, I think if you were to sort of poll the political perspectives of our students, that they're pretty much a footprint of the broader population. We've got conservative students, liberal students, and a whole lot in the middle. And one of the things that we try to do is actually, at least on our campus, I know that they're all talking to each other, which it would be nice if folks that were 20 and 30 years older were able to exhibit the same thing. And one thing that I also mentioned in my remarks at commencement is Gallup just did a poll in collaboration with the Lumina Foundation to actually poke at that very question. And I believe it was 73% of Republican undergraduate students and 75% of Democrat undergraduate students said that they believed that their institution did an excellent or good job of fostering discourse across all subjects on their campus, and that they felt comfortable expressing their opinions. And I think if you look at most newspaper editorials, you would never believe that that was the case.
Are you finding more coordination among colleges to address these issues?
I don't remember a time in my life where over 600 college presidents ever signed anything. So, I mean, maybe one of the things that's good about the current challenge is that we're taking a moment for higher education leaders across all sectors and across the country to reaffirm together the core values of what we do.
We've been speaking with Jonathan Green. He is the president of Susquehanna University. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.